Well, let's see. All right. I feel like I should apologize preemptively almost every single day because I know that I start these live streams later than I would like, but there's just so many things to get organized in the morning. Maybe I need to push it back an hour. Who knows? But I do appreciate you guys always being patient with me and willing to join me during those moments when everything is just kind of up in the air. But if you are joining me, please drop a comment. Let me know where you're listening from, whether geographically or whether you are in your office and you have your earbuds in and your boss has specifically told you not to use your earbuds while in the workplace, but you are choosing to defy those orders. That is definitely not something I have ever done. But I would like to say, let's see, where are the comments? All right. Celine is listening from Massachusetts. That is awesome. Yeah, so we have a lot to get into today. So good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to my weekly live stream, Unwired. I am your host, Outspoken Samantha, and I really do appreciate you being here. So make sure that you hit that subscribe button while you are here. Make sure that you also hit the thumbs up button that tells the YouTube algorithm that this is a show worth pushing out to more viewers. And those are always great ways to support my channel, which I always do appreciate. You guys are so excited. You should be excited because today we're going to discuss several different things that I think will be very entertaining. And as always, let me know, make sure that you can hear me, make sure that my tech is set up properly. As a one-woman show who is not technologically savvy, I like to make sure that everything is functioning properly. And a lot of times that feedback comes from you guys. Today, we are going to be discussing the situation. Okay, John wants me to let you guys know. John is watching from Illinois, and I appreciate you being here, John. I really do appreciate it. I try to get to as many comments as I can. I read them as we're going. If I don't get to a comment, just know that I truly appreciate you being here. So, what we are going to discuss today, there was a meeting that two CNN hosts requested with none other than the big bad orange man himself, Donald Trump. And we're going to get into their reasoning for it and what their potential motives might have been for requesting this sit down with the upcoming president. We're also going to discuss the highly debated topic of who should use what bathroom, because that's the country that we are living in right now. This is specifically regarding Nancy Mace, as she lit a fire with the Democrats yesterday in response to the election of a new Congress person who is a man that has recently decided to become a woman. And now we have to remind the left that clothing and names don't change the facts. Sorry, I guess my voice is a little dry right now. So this is becoming a huge issue. And lastly, we are going to get into some clips from the media as they are prepping their viewers for a Trump administration by scaring the crap out of them, because that's what they always do. Because they don't for 1 second want their viewers to get the idea that there's a reasonable explanation for anything that Trump is proposing or that any of his cabinet picks want to implement. So those are the things that I want to get into today. So let's get started. All right, so I'm just going to take another little drink here. I don't know why my throat is suddenly very dry. And I apologize if I cannot pronounce your name. Keither Vasan. How are you? I am great. Yeah, we've got some great comments already. I appreciate you guys participating. But before we get started, I would love it if each of you would hit the share button and invite at least one person to the live stream that you think might be interested in the conversation we're going to have. Also, yes, please leave your comments below and I will read as many as I can. Of course, super chats will be the first priority and the donations are always appreciated. But either way, I always appreciate you guys just engaging in the conversation. So let's get into this first story because I'm sure that at least you guys have at least heard about this happening because this is pretty much the same thing as hell freezing over. Let me take another drink. I am so sorry. This was not an issue 5 minutes ago. I don't know why my voice is suddenly so scratchy and tickly, but I'm going to do my best to get through it. So I think of all of the things we might have expected from the left following a Trump win, a meeting between two show hosts from CNN between themselves and Donald Trump for the purpose of restarting communications was definitely not on my bingo card. So yesterday, a clip of Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezenski, who co-host a show called Morning Joe. Sorry, my brain went blank there. It circulated on Twitter where they told their audience that after hearing all of their concerns from their viewers about the upcoming Trump administration, that they chose to request a meeting with the man himself and supposedly attempt to bridge the gap between them. So let me pull up this clip here. So this clip is about 2.5 minutes long, but I do think it's important to hear the whole thing in case you missed it. So we're going to hear the explanation from Joe and Mika about why they chose to sit down with Donald Trump. So here we go.
Over the past week, Joe and I have heard from so many people, from political leaders to regular citizens, deeply dismayed by several of President-elect Trump's cabinet selections, and they are scared. Last Thursday, we expressed our own concerns on this broadcast and even said we would appreciate the opportunity to speak with the president-elect himself. On Friday, we were given the opportunity to do just that. Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit. And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show, has watched it over the past year or over the past decade, that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications. My father often spoke with world leaders with whom he and the United States profoundly disagreed. That's a task shared by reporters and commentators alike. We had not spoken to President Trump since March of 2020, other than a personal call Joe made to Trump on the morning after the attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. In this meeting, President Trump was cheerful. He was upbeat. He seemed interested in finding common ground with Democrats on some of the most divisive issues. And for those asking why we would go speak to the president-elect during such fraught times, especially between us, I guess I would ask back, why wouldn't we? 5 years of political warfare has deeply divided Washington and the country. We have been as clear as we know how in expressing our deep concerns about President Trump's actions and words in the coarsening of public debate. But for nearly 80 million Americans, election denialism, public trials, and January 6th were not as important as the issues that moved them to send Donald Trump back to the White House with their vote. Joe and I realize it's time to do something different. And that starts with not only talking about Donald Trump, but also talking with him. Over the past
All right, so very, very interesting. As I said, not expected. But a few things that stood out to me about their statements. First, they couldn't help but slip in their fear-mongering talking points that they have relied on to rile up their base for several years. I mean, Joe said in his first comments, we talked to the president about abortion, mass deportations, political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. And I imagine that last one was to get a feel for how Trump might want to address the relentless smear campaign that has been launched against him over the last 8 years, of which these two have played a large part in. And in my opinion, the reason they haven't extended this hand of friendship is because, one, I don't think they ever expected him to get back into the White House. And two, the stakes are a lot higher than they were even 4 years ago. I mean, yes, Trump has endured plenty of mudslinging from these people since he first took office in 2016 and through his entire first term in office. However, it hasn't stopped since then. And without him being at the head of the country and being weighed down with political lawfare and censorship against him, he's had to endure a lot of these attacks without nearly the ability to counter their accusations with the truth. So they've essentially been able to smear him without any real accountability. And they know that at this point, Trump has a far larger bone to pick with these people than he did before. And while he has demonstrated far greater of an ability to forgive than anyone on the left has ever demonstrated in their entire lives, I guarantee he's not going to forget. And these people are terrified because he now not only has more reason to expose them than ever, he is assembling a team of disruptors who are not owned by the establishment, at least for the most part, who have no problem with bringing every single skeleton out of the closets of these people. And that could be the end of the mainstream media forever. So as Joe and Mika, I can give them credit for conceding that they didn't agree with Trump on many of the things in their conversation. But of course, that disagreement would be because 98% of the things that these people have said about this man have been completely untrue. So the only way to find common ground is for them to admit that they were lying. And of course, that's not ever going to happen. But Micah saying that 5 years of political warfare has divided the country is a direct example of the fact that the media is never going to take responsibility for the fact that they're the ones that have largely driven the division and political warfare in this country. So it's just kind of an interesting take on their part. And Joe, just to read a couple comments, Joe says, is it bad that it's 11:30 and I'm still in my pajamas? Not at all. If I'm being completely honest, I am wearing a very nice shirt right now and I'm wearing sweatpants. So I'm only halfway out of my pajamas right now, but we just keep it real around here. But as far as this political warfare, let's just have a little bit of a blast from the past. And by blast from the past, I mean, like 3 weeks ago? This is Micah. She went on an unhinged rant on MSNBC telling us that we're all too stupid to understand what the Trump administration really means, what this really means for the country. So we should all be grateful that she is here to explain it to us. So let's just have a quick listen to what she had to say.
As Trump's fascism is, and is the lead story every day, his cozying up to dictators, his obsession with Hitler that has now come out, what he has said about our veterans, and what he wants to do with the military against his political adversaries. It's all huge news. This is the future that we're looking at in the next Trump term, if there is one. But this is what voters know right now, that he is killing us. I'm talking about us women. He's killing us. He is putting us at risk. He is making us afraid to have babies. He is putting our reproductive health at risk. And some women have died already because of this. So we can see right now what's coming. These headlines, and very good reporting, by the way, that shouldn't be questioned by idiots, about what Trump has said about Hitler. That's incredibly important to know. But I do understand that people who are busy and that are people who are just tapping in may not be able to comprehend because we've been free. We've been comfortable. We cannot comprehend that. And I understand that. I validate that it is hard to go from here to there. It is where we're going. I hope we don't find out the hard way.
So Mike is basically telling us that, I understand you're busy. I understand you have too many things going on to pay attention to really what's going on. So let me tell you, let me step in and explain it to you, you little ignorant peasant. And then there was an appearance. We're going to look at this one really quick. There was an appearance on The View that she did around the same time, warning people to not get used to hearing words like fascism to the point where we stop becoming afraid of it, especially when it's associated with Trump. Of course, never mind that these people are the reason that no one cares anymore about words like racism and misogyny and white supremacy or any of these other phrases that actually used to give us cause for legitimate concern. But not only that, she really has to ride this wave of emotional manipulation and so that she can keep women in particular locked in with the Democrat Party. So let's look at that really, really quick.
You need to believe him. And these are the final hours. We need you. We need you, and all of you to vote.
Yep. Yeah, there you go. So, Mika, I think you heard us before you came out. We were talking earlier about yesterday's Trump rally from hell at Madison Square Garden. So what did you make of it?
Well, I think it was everything that you need to know about Donald Trump in one weird white nationalist Nazi type rally. And of course, there's historic parallels to where and when this happened. But
All right, so Trump is killing us. Trump is the worst thing ever. Trump is, all of the things. He did, before I kind of get into, my thoughts on why this all happened, just one more thing I want to share. Sorry, my computer is running a little bit slow this morning, which I can totally relate to. But never mind this weird advertising here. All right. It says Trump breaks silence on Morning Joe's secret Mar-a-Lago trip as viewers call for a boycott of the show. So it turns out the audience of CNN are not as thrilled about trying to build bridges with this man as Micah and Joe are. But it says President Donald Trump revealed new details of his meeting with MSNBC co-hosts after viewers mocked the famous television couple for bending the knee to the president-elect they once denounced as a fascist. Trump met with Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezenski on Friday after a tumultuous relationship over the last 7 years. During the 2024 election, they repeatedly denounced Trump as a racist, sexist, fascist, and told viewers he did not deserve to be president. At one point, Scarborough said Trump was acting full-on Hitler, and Brzezinski condemned him for echoing the dangerous language of infamous fascist leaders. But the president-elect told Fox News that he took the meeting because in order to make America great again, it is very important, if not vital, to have a free and fair and open press or media. I'm not looking for retribution, grandstanding, or to destroy people who treated me very unfairly, he added. Trump said Scarborough requested the meeting and that the pair traveled to Palm Beach, Florida to meet on Friday morning at Mar-a-Lago. Many things were discussed, and I have very much appreciated the fact that they wanted to have open communication, he said. In many ways, it's too bad that it wasn't done long ago. Trump said that both of the hosts congratulated me on running a great and flawless campaign, one for the history books. I do have to question if they really did congratulate Trump on running a flawless campaign. I think he might be embellishing a little bit there, but I'm here for it. I think it's funny. Overall, just color me skeptical, but in no way do I see this as an attempt to mend fences, to unify the country, or to work through their differences of opinion. I mean, I think there are two sides as to why this meeting happened, why Joe and Mika requested it, and why Trump agreed to meet with them. For Joe and Mika, as I said earlier, I think there's a legitimate fear that there's some level of consequences coming. And I'm not talking about politicizing the DOJ to use against people who disagree with you, to criminalize and silence dissent, as the Democrats have done against Trump. I mean that there might be legitimate reasons to open at least some kind of an investigation into these news organizations and hold them accountable for their constant relentless fear mongering, and really put it on paper what their spread of mis and disinformation has done to Trump and his family and the harm that it has caused to the public. And if they didn't have anything to worry about, I don't think they would have set up this meeting and tried to play nice. Ultimately, Trump can make all of the accusations of defamation or libel or speech that has incited violence against him. He can accuse them until he's blue in the face. But if there's no evidence to back it up, then these news organizations wouldn't have anything to worry about. However, I think it's because they know that there's a legitimate case with mounds of evidence against them that they are actually worried. Secondly, they absolutely do not want their base to let their guard down with this man, which is why they're still pushing these scare tactics that they always have. Even in their explanation as to why they went to meet with him, they still want their audience to believe that he is solely responsible for the events of January 6th, that he plans to pack up the woman who cleans your house or the guy who mows your lawn and send them back to their country, even if they were born here, even if for no other reason than they look like they weren't born here. They want their base to believe that he's still coming for women's rights and that women are in danger. So I think that the idea that they want their audience to believe that they are trying to build this bridge of communication so that they can get the inside scoop on his evil plans. And the closer they can get to him, the more they can protect their brainwashed viewers from his authoritarian reign. I also think that on some level, they want to appear as heroes in the eyes of their audience, willing to take one for the team and step into the lair of the beast, bringing relief to those around them, as they know they will never have to experience something so horrifying. I think there's just a lot of reasons behind their motives, but not one of them, I think, has anything to do with a genuine desire to make peace with Donald Trump. And I would love to hear what your guys' theories are in the comments as well as to why you think they called this meeting for Trump. But overall, I think this is the funniest thing about it to me. It shows how much of their rhetoric was really to rile up their base and cause fear. But ultimately, because ultimately they know that this man is not the dangerous tyrant that they have painted him to be. And what this means is that all of these women that are shaving their heads and breaking up their families and going into these absolutely psychotic episodes have all had their brains melted based on things that are completely untrue. And it shows how much these people were truly using their base as pawns, and that everything that people like Mika and Joe and other media personalities have said about Trump and are currently still saying about Trump, as we will get into in a little bit, has been just to scare people away from supporting this man so that they could keep power for themselves. But when he didn't win, they're like, never mind, he's not that person. We didn't brainwash enough pawns to accomplish our goal, so we don't need to keep up that rhetoric anymore. So I think we have a lot of women, maybe, I don't know, they're pretty far gone, maybe waking up and looking at their bald head in the mirror and realizing that it was all for nothing. But I shouldn't be laughing at these people's pain. But I can't help it. It's just so completely ridiculous. Now, as far as to why he agreed to meet with them, I think that it can be summed up in one simple phrase: keep your friends close and your enemies closer. he knows exactly who these people are. He's known it since 2016. They are not trustworthy. They have no interest in finding common ground, and they would love nothing more than to see this man 6 feet under. I also think that he met with them to allow them to demonstrate their own hypocrisy, because they have spent years painting him as the most dangerous man to walk the earth, worse than Hitler, worse than Stalin, worse than Mao. Yet if they are willing to come and meet with him and tell their audience that there is actually room to find common ground, then they are showing he's not the person that they have said he is. And not only that, for him to be willing to sit down with people who are journalists on one of the most corrupt and dishonest news organizations that has ever existed, and allow them to report on this meeting in whatever way they choose, which he knows is likely to be unhinged and emotional, where they twist and turn the truth. All of that completely contradicts their own narrative that he's this dangerous dictator whose very name should incite terror in even the most hardened conscience. And while I appreciate his response to this, and I truly think in a lot of ways he would like to have a relationship with the media that he used to have, where they used to respect him and they were all clamoring to talk to him and host him and rub elbows with him, I wholeheartedly believe he knows that he cannot trust them, and having them in his sphere is easier for him to keep an eye on them. So those are my thoughts as to why this all unfolded. There could be more reasons. And again, I would love to hear your thoughts as to why you think Joe and Mika called this meeting, as to why Trump agreed to do it. Do you think that he's really trying to bury the hatchet with these people? Do you think that he really believes that there is room to mend fences and to have a working relationship with these people? As G. Gable, yes, this is the point that I just made. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I believe that Trump is not stupid. He knows these people. He knows that they have an agenda. He knows that there is an underlying motive that is meant to benefit them, not him, behind everything that they do. Nessie just asked the question, Samantha, did you cover this? Peanut's rabies test came back negative. This should be nationwide top news. I have not covered that yet. I think I did see that that update recently. If you guys have not followed the Peanut, the squirrel, and Fred the raccoon story, there is a video on that on my channel. I highly recommend watching that. If I can find time to do it, I will do a quick update video on that very tragic story. Celine says the left made making a bridge with them impossible, not the right. Completely agree. If there is division in that, whatever division is happening in this country, whatever, how wide the gap is at this point, it has not been because of us. It is because the left has become so unhinged. It is because they have based their ideology and their votes and their morals based on things that we cannot unify on. We can't unify on transitioning children. We can't unify on sexualizing children. We cannot unify on gender ideology or killing the unborn or whatever else. These are issues that there is no common ground on. And also the fact that we know that they want to destroy America as we know it. They don't want the Constitution. They don't want freedom of speech. They don't want us to be able to have the right to protect ourselves. They want to have this gap between the elites and the impoverished class. And those are all things that they continue to work towards. So there's no unifying on that when their goals and their objectives are so completely off the rails. So I think that there are things that can happen by at least attempting to speak with these people and at least attempting to show some kind of unity. But I don't think it's genuine. I really, really don't. Justin asked, what are your thoughts on Trump and Putin's war on Ukraine? Honestly, I've been trying to follow this story. This is not something that I am an expert in by any means, but I'm trying to obviously pay attention to it because this is so incredibly important. I don't know exactly what is happening, but I've heard theories that this is something that they are trying to rile up and to incite to delay the transition of power to Trump, to delay the process of, you know, our own election process, to make things, to drive things to the point of no return in Ukraine and in Russia, where Trump has to continue to engage with these people and allow this war to continue. I think all of this has to do with, honestly, disrupting the transfer of power to Trump. I am watching it closely. I am trying to figure out exactly what is going on. If Joe Mobley is in the comments right now, we have a live stream tomorrow evening at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. I'm sure that is something he will want to cover. He is much more of an expert on these subjects than I am, so I highly recommend putting it on your calendar and tuning into the live stream tomorrow night where we can discuss it more in depth. But it is definitely something to keep an eye on because it is scary. It is really, really scary. We are literally on the verge of being dragged into World War III. And there's a lot of very, serious implications to that. So I would love to dive into that topic. So join the live stream tomorrow night with Joe. Let's get into this next topic because this is so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. We need to talk about, this is also something that was circulating on X yesterday, and it has been circulating over the last couple of days. And it's in regards to this historic election of the first trans congressperson, which is an individual by the name of Sarah McBride, who used to be known as Tim McBride. So let me pull this up here. So this person is in office, and the rest of Congress now has to try and figure out what bathroom this person should be allowed to use. And I mean, those of us who are still sane and reasonable understand that this isn't even a question. And if you're anything like me, you're probably astonished that the people in the highest offices of our country are having to deal with issues like this when we are still buckling under food and housing prices. And we keep getting, report after of this violent, trendy Aragua, I don't know how to say it properly, gang that has set up shop to further wreak havoc on innocent people. And they are taking over areas of other cities, of so many different cities. So these are the things that we are actually dealing with. Yet we have people in Congress that are like, hey, we need to figure out which bathroom men and women should be able to use. But this has been a big issue over the last couple of days. And it does matter because, as we know, the left is trying to push this ideology into every nook and cranny of our country. And it is affecting our kids. It is affecting our schools. It is affecting education. It's affecting our families. It is everywhere. So we do need to discuss it. As Kevin, I cannot pronounce your last name, so I apologize. It says Sarah McBride from Delaware. Nobody in Delaware knew they were trans. Exactly. So this is a detailed thread that Michael Knowles put up a few days ago. And at first, I didn't really pay that much attention to it. And perhaps that's just a testament to how desensitized we become to these issues, because I'm like, oh, look, another man identifying as a woman. What next? But this is important to understand because this particular situation, it highlights that there are so many motivating factors to declare yourself as trans, but rarely does it actually have to do with a person dealing with the legitimate situation of gender dysphoria. And in this case, it seems to be that the driving factor is just pure narcissism. So let's just go through a little bit of this thread. This one says, this just kind of introduces us to who this person is and a little bit of their story about how they went from being Tim to Sarah. In this thread, it says, a bombshell story few are talking about. Joe Biden, his family, and the state of Delaware have brought us Tim Sarah McBride, the first trans-identifying man elected to Congress. And then he goes on to share some of their past positions on trans ideology, which of course includes allowing kids the right to mutilate their own bodies and not wanting to answer any questions about the unfairness of men and women's sports. So those are just a couple of the things that tend to go along with the issue of being trans. But in the fourth part of this thread, that's when Michael lists all of the benefits that Tim has gained by becoming Sarah. Now, this is what it says. It says, when Tim first claimed to be Sarah, he thought that identifying as trans felt mutually exclusive to achieving his political career goals, but his career shows the opposite. Once a mere white guy, Tim suddenly could claim DEI privilege. In this post, it says, at an early age, this is Tim speaking, at an early age, I also developed my love of politics. I wrestled with the idea that my dream and my identity seemed mutually exclusive. I had to pick, so I picked what I thought was easier and wouldn't disappoint people. I told my family and some of my closest friends over winter break. My brothers and parents greeted me with immediate support, and on the first time that my parents have had to worry about my safety, my job prospects, and my acceptance. This story is my experience, and my experience alone. So let's see. It goes on to say, by identifying as transgender and dubbing himself Sarah in college, Tim's political prospects skyrocketed. After declaring himself Sarah, this otherwise unremarkable former staffer for Beau Biden was appointed to major activist roles and given a platform to address the U.S. Department of the Interior, Department of Justice, Department of Housing and Urban Development, and more. Tim was backed by then Vice President Joe Biden, along with Hillary Clinton and the entire Democrat Party establishment, becoming the first trans person to speak at the Democrat National Convention. Tim was welcomed as Sarah into Hollywood activist circles, furthering his fame and career prospects as an up-and-coming politician. The celebrity schmoozing included run-ins with LGBT activists such as Laverne Cox and Frankie Grande. He also rubbed elbows with sketchier figures such as Jacob Tobia. While Tim appears to make an effort to present a more palatable version of transgender ideology by dressing up like a young Hillary Clinton, off hours he has palled around with the more typically extreme and lascivious exemplars of transgenderism, which we can see here. Ew. And there he is hanging out with Jeffrey Marsh, who is somebody that is known, has a very popular TikTok account where they go on and basically tell kids how to cut off contact with their parents if they're trans. And he's just, the man is unhinged, so unhinged. So Michael just ends this thread by saying there's no such thing as normal transgenderism. Men and women are different. Men can't become women and vice versa. It's a false ideology that harms everyone that encounters it, especially those who fall prey to it, and most especially children. McBride is now a congressman. Will Republicans stand firm against this dangerous ideology, or will they call this man Sarah and invite him into the women's bathroom? So I appreciated that thread as Michael posted it. Let's see. Sorry, I'm reading your guys' comment. Arma15 was the one who who shared the Buy Me a Coffee platform, and which apparently is better than Super Chat. So of course, all of those donations are super helpful. So that is that's where this whole thing started. As such, because I have the same questions, how are Republicans in office going to handle this? How are they going to address this person? What resolutions can they make to reinforce facts and reality? So then we have Representative Nancy Mace. I keep wanting to call her Nancy Grace, but Nancy Grace is a talk show host. I believe she covers crime and things. But if I say Nancy Grace, it's just because I can't keep the name straight in my brain. But this is Representative Nancy Mace introduces Capitol bathroom bill, including transgender politician Sarah McBride. Incoming transgender politician Sarah McBride responds. It says, I don't know why, but the fact that we have to introduce a resolution to tell people in the Capitol building which bathroom they should use, I don't know if that's ever not going to be shocking to me. But it says Representative Nancy Mace unveiled a resolution on Monday that would ban transgender women from using female bathrooms inside the Capitol, drawing immediate criticism from Democratic Representative-elect Sarah McBride, who will be the first openly transgender member of Congress. Biological men do not belong in women's private women's spaces. Period. Full stop. End of story. Mace wrote on X, sharing her legislative proposal. The resolution calls for a prohibition on House members and employees from using restrooms, changing rooms, or locker rooms other than those corresponding to the biological sex of such individuals in the Capitol or in the House office buildings. The bill directs the House Sergeant at Arms to enforce the new measure, which Mace is seeking to attach to a House rules package that will be voted on early next year. Never thought this would happen, Mace wrote in another tweet, declaring that protecting biological women starts here, and it starts now. Now, obviously, because we live in the upside down, there has been backlash against Nancy, and Democrats are losing their minds over this. I mean, as much as they ever do, I guess. This resolution, guys, I'm just going to have to keep laughing at this because it's so ridiculous. But as one of the commenters, I believe it was Celine, said earlier, the Democrats caused this problem, not us. So reporters came from everywhere because they were clamoring to get a comment from Miss Grace for their breaking story, because apparently which bathroom men and women should use is now a breaking story in America. So let's have a look. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be. Oh, I can't help it. I shouldn't be laughing, but I am. So this is Nancy responding to one of the reporters. This may have been from Newsmax, but I'm not entirely sure. So let's have a listen.
So that being a feminist makes me an extremist. I'm totally here for it.
Is this effort in response to Congresswoman McBride coming to Congress?
Yes, and absolutely, and then some. I'm not going to stand for a man. If someone with a penis is in the women's locker room, that's not okay. And I'm a victim of abuse myself. I'm a rape survivor. I have PTSD from the abuse I've suffered at the hands of a man. And I know how vulnerable women and girls are in private spaces. So I'm absolutely 100% going to stand in the way of any man who wants to be in a women's restroom, in our locker rooms, in our changing rooms. I will be there fighting you every step of the way. So that being a
Apparently, this is an extremist position these days, which is absolutely crazy. The next clip I want to share, if I can find it really quick. This one I thought was interesting because, let me see if I can.
not be in the locker room.
Hold on, let me rewind here. The next one, I thought this was interesting because she's putting forth this resolution to keep this person out of women's bathrooms, but she's still calling Congressman McBride a she and calling this person Sarah, which I think Michael Knowles presented a very interesting, question. Is that the way that we should be handling this? I mean, is it all or nothing, or do we have to accommodate some kind of middle ground? So I would love to hear your guys' thoughts, even though I'm pretty sure I know where most of you are going to stand on this. But let's hear what she had to say in response to this reporter.
Not be in the locker room, should not be in changing rooms, should not be in our restrooms either. And I'm going to be standing in the brink, standing in his or her way, putting a stop to this insanity and this nonsense. She doesn't get a say. This is about real women and women's rights. And the far left, radical left, they want to erase women and women's rights, and I'm not going to let them.
Would you want Sarah McBride then to use the men's restroom outside of the two?
She's was born a biological male. She should use the men's restroom.
How does
it should work.
How would what's the mechanism for checking who's qualified to use the ladies' room then? Like, just sort of generally. Obviously, Sarah McBride has identified herself as a trans person, but what would be the
Here's the deal: biological men shouldn't be in women's private spaces. Period. End of story.
So this is specifically because Sarah McBride is coming to Congress.
That and more. So, I mean, we can't do it here. We can't do it anywhere. I've been strong on women's rights for several years now, and it's time to make sure that we protect women and girls everywhere.
I think that the first reporter, or the one in the middle that asked, well, what's the mechanism for checking who should be in did he use the word qualified to use the women's bathroom? Of course, this is just, further pushing this idea that we are interested in people's genitalia and we want to be checking people's pants, whether or not they're in the right bathroom or not, which is completely insane. For the most part, you can generally tell if someone is a man or not, no matter how much makeup they use, no matter how they style their hair, no matter how they dress, you can usually tell. It's pretty easy to tell who is a man, who is a woman, especially when they start talking. So no, we're not interested in checking your genitalia. You guys are the ones that are obsessed with people's body parts and chopping them off and mutilating them and showing pictures of them to little kids. So I just don't appreciate the consistent gaslighting and insisting that we're the ones that are, trying to sexualize people and be inappropriate with people. It's completely ridiculous. I love Leonard's comment here. It says, if Democrats weren't losing their minds, I would be worried. That is it. Before we continue with this, that is a great point, because I have had a lot of concern over the fact that Democrats seem to have been, be relatively agreeable, meeting with President Trump, agreeing to this peaceful transition of power, conceding so nicely to his win. That's not genuine at all. Like that level of niceness is not genuine. And it just, to me, seems that there's something bigger brewing underneath the surface. So, again, that probably just speaks to how stupid they think we are, that, we think that they could flip a switch that easily and that they will let go of all of their anger and rage so quickly when they've been so dedicated to it and immersed in it for so long. But to this issue, again, here's the thing. We didn't create this problem. Woke left extremists created this problem. The majority of the country knows there are only two genders, men and women. The people that are adhering to this ideology know that there are two genders. They know that words have meaning and words need to be attached to reality, or we just end up in chaos, which is what the left wants. That is the purpose of all of this. It has had nothing to do with living as your authentic self. It has nothing to do with being inclusive or diverse. They know that you can't identify as the opposite sex any more than you can identify as a potato. But they also know, the thing that they also know is that we are the bigger people. We are the nicer people. They know that the vast majority of the people on the right believe in God in some way, in some form or another. And with that comes a certain set of values, which are generally things like being kind and being accepting and loving people no matter what. The things that Democrats constantly claim to represent, but their actions consistently contradict the things that they claim to stand for. But they like to try to dictate to us what being loving and accepting means, which to them is to allow people to do whatever they want. And that if we step in and expect people to abide by the rules of things like science and truth, then we're being hypocrites to the things that we believe, because we're saying that not everything goes, that there are certain rules that need to be in place for society to function for everybody. And so they run with that, and they not only grill that into people's brains, but they also tell people that anybody that disagrees with their delusion doesn't have an actual valid reason to do so, but it's just because we hate them. And but the truth is, we don't hate these people. I don't hate Tim/Sarah McBride. We don't hate people that are going through a mental health crisis. And we definitely don't hate these kids who are struggling with their body image or their mental health. Actually, we're the ones that show this group the highest level of compassion by refusing to play along and recognizing the dangers of letting these people spiral as far down into this black hole as delusion as they can, with no barriers in the way, without anybody telling them that there are real life consequences to making some of these choices. People need to keep their feet firmly planted on the ground, regardless of what the rest of the world, particularly the delusional left, is trying to normalize, regardless of how far they're willing to go to get attention or to even harm themselves, because the world is going to reward them for it. Because at some point, I believe that most of these people will eventually want to feel whole again. And in order to do that, they're going to need to keep a firm view of reality so that they know how to get back to it, especially once they realize how badly they have been manipulated. It's it's just an insane thing to try to have to deal with, especially as Christians, as people who believe in God, who, as people who truly do want the best for people in general, to have to put our foot down and to have to, make things really uncomfortable for people and say, I'm sorry that you look like a woman and you are in a dress, and that now you still have to use the men's bathroom. That is incredibly awkward. But you are the one that created that situation for yourself. And my level of compassion for you is to help you understand that reality is still important, that facts are still important, and it's protective of you and your mental health, as well as the privacy and safety of others, and that there's no positive end game to continue to entertain this mass psychosis. There's no positive outcome for anybody. Now, as far as this specific resolution, it's obviously not just about the privacy and the safety around Nancy Mace, but this is setting an example from the top down that the voices of girls and women in this country still matter, especially after we've seen the Biden-Harris administration all but abolish Title IX. We need to let them know that the word woman still has its own meaning, and that women still have their rights based on their biology and based on how we were created as female, and that it's not something that anyone can just take upon themselves and turn it into something that is twisted and perverse. So, she's setting an example for the rest of the country that despite what the left has said, abortion is not the only thing that matters to women, that we have a whole host of other attacks that are being launched against us. And we need to see that example set from the White House, reestablished in the White House, as we've seen people like Rachel Levine and Sam Brinton appointed these important positions in the Biden administration, telling girls that their biology no longer matters, that how they were created no longer matters, and that anybody with any kind of sick fetish can become a woman and misrepresent what that word actually means. But just a couple of tweets. There was a tweet by Jeremy Boring that kind of just goes along with what I just said that I really appreciated. He said, when we still recognize gender dysphoria as a mental illness, which of course it is, and had not allowed trans ideology to become a weaponized social contagion and scam, most people were fine with confused people trying to pass quietly, using a stall in whatever restroom was least disruptive. We felt pity and turned a blind eye, thinking, there but for the grace of God go I. But our pity has been exploited to the potential destruction of our entire society, the safety of our wives and daughters and mothers, and the sanity of a generation of our children. So now we can't lead with pity anymore. The stakes are too high. And I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on that tweet. But I think, because it is hard when we see people like Blair White and Buck Angel and some of these other people that have, from what I can tell, legitimate gender dysphoria and have lived their lives as the opposite sex. And there are these people in society. And it never used to be this major issue where we were concerned about perhaps the very minute possibility of coming across one of these people in our bathrooms or our locker rooms. It just wasn't a big concern because this was such a small, minuscule portion of the population. The chances of coming across one of these people was just not even on most of our radar. And understanding that legitimate gender dysphoria is a very crippling thing to live with, and just trying to offer grace to people trying to deal with it in the best way that they can. And of course, there were so many barriers before where you had to go through so many different processes to even get to the place where you could live your life as the opposite sex. And we used to just kind of, turn a side eye to it, a blind eye to it. I don't know if a blind eye is the right word, but I could call somebody like Blair White a she, or I could call Buck Angel a he, and not really worry too much about it and just kind of be respectful of this place where they were at in their life. But because gender ideology has twisted it into this thing where now they're trying to teach our kids this thing as fact and trying to instill this as the actual way that human beings were born from the top down, that's when we're like, okay, like we either have to be all or nothing on this thing. And it's because of the situation that the left has created. And I think that people that are legitimately, have gender dysphoria, they understand that. They understand the problem that has been created for them, and that people might backtrack and say, I'm sorry that you look like a woman and this is how you've been living your whole life. But if I want to be consistent and I want to fight this for the sake of our kids, I might have to start calling you a he. So I'm just trying to, it's just the situation that we are in right now. And you guys can let me know what your thoughts are, but just to kind of close out this entire situation, if we really want to talk about hate, Representative Nancy Grace, shockingly or unshockingly, is getting death threats now over this trans bathroom bill. This says South Carolina Representative Nancy Mace says she has been getting death threats over her push to ban incoming transgender Democratic Representative-elect Sarah McBride and others from using female restrooms inside the Capitol. The backlash came after Mace unveiled a new bathroom bill resolution earlier this week that seeks to prevent trans women from using the female restrooms on Capitol Hill, arguing she wasn't going to stand for someone with a penis in the women's locker room. They're threatening to kill me over this. Men that want to use women's restrooms are threatening to kill me over this issue, Mace told News Nation's On Balance late Tuesday. The apparent threats flooded in after Mace revealed earlier Tuesday that McBride, who is set to be the first openly transgender member of Congress, was absolutely the reason behind her push for the new legislation. So yeah. Obviously, that's not a surprising response, but I appreciate her willingness to do this, because I think we all understand getting the country back on track after the unhinged insanity that has been allowed to run rampant over the last several years. It's going to be challenging and it is going to be messy. It is definitely not going to be for the faint of heart, which is why I even more so appreciate so many of Trump's cabinet picks. But if we are all unified on wanting a better and brighter future for our families and for our kids, then we need to get back to the truth, to actual compassion, and to valuing a core sense of right and wrong. So, I think she's setting the example that if you choose to stand up to this, it's not going to be easy. If you choose to adhere to reality and say that, you know what, like I feel compassion for whatever mental health crisis you are going through right now, but I still, facts and truth matter, that's not going to mean that the path forward is going to be smooth and without conflict. There is going to be conflict. You probably will be threatened. You probably will be targeted. You probably will, lose a sense of safety. And I think acknowledging that reality is helpful for people to recognize as we stand up to these things. But she's saying, you know what, I don't care. You can come after me. This matters. And this is not a matter of discrimination. This is not a matter of me personally targeting anybody. This is a matter of the standards and the values that we have as a country, and getting those back on track on a straight path. So I truly appreciate her. And I appreciate all of you guys being here. We have one more little segment that I want to do. I know we're getting close to an hour. Oh my goodness gracious. Let me get to these other clips here that I want to touch on. My computer just froze briefly. Whoop. Leave your guys' comments on some of the things that we have talked about so far. As I have put the Buy Me a Coffee link in the comment description, Arma15 has, like I said, introduced me to that platform. He says it's better than super chats. And like I said, all of the donations are so greatly appreciated, because they do help me to support this channel and to bring you more content. You guys may have noticed that my wall is finished. We got all the tiles filled in. My husband finished the wallpaper over here. I've got my Christmas tree, so I'm going to slowly work on decorating this area and making it a little bit more lighter and brighter. But I love how it's turning out. You guys can definitely let me know what you think. The last thing I want to touch on, we're going to look at some of these clips from the media, the ones who are not trying to build bridges with President Trump, which are most of them. And they are, of course, sticking to their tried and true favorite fear tactics, which is to let their viewers know that they basically need to hunker down and prepare for the worst. So I just want to say, I don't know about you guys, but I honestly think that the media is looking forward to Trump being in office again, because as we know, their ratings have drastically been declining over the last few years because, as it turns out, trying to make a president who is practically a vegetable sound exciting and paint him as a strong leader is not nearly as exciting as trying to paint someone with a personality like Donald Trump as a dictator and a monster. So the former has not kept their viewership up. And of course, the declining ratings is also because, as we've lived firsthand under the Biden-Harris regime, and most Americans have recognized the reality of our quality of life significantly declining due to Democrat anti-American policies, they have really had their eyes open to just how big the media lies are when everything they say is the exact opposite of what's going on in real life. So in other words, they've tanked their own credibility, and the only people still watching them are too far gone for rationality to ever break through again. So I think they're really gearing up for their anti-Trump nonsense again, and it's way more exciting when their target is front and center. So he's not there yet, but that's not going to stop them from spewing their misinformation and trying to keep their base from leaving them by controlling them with fear and lies. So one of the favorite things that the media is loving to talk about right now is this issue of illegal immigration and how the right, we want to hold people accountable for breaking our laws and crossing our border without going through the proper process, which is something that the left is describing as wanting to use the military to basically open fire on anyone who even looks like they weren't born here. So the first thing that Trump has basically said, and I think that this has been from his name, Tom Homan. I don't know why my brain just went blank, but wanting to weed out the criminals and the gangs and the traffickers and send them back first. But the media spin on this is refusing to distinguish the gang members from women and children, because doing that would expose that they know that deportations on some level are actually a good thing. So they have to lump everybody together and pretend that women and children are the target, and then attach the worst possible method of deportation that they can think of to the Trump policy, which is just creating one giant basket of propaganda. So all of that said, here is CNN, this woman on CNN, no idea what her name is, Julie Roginski, perhaps, never heard of her, just going on this unhinged rant, just basically just doubling down on everything that I just outlined. So let's have a listen.
Promise you with every fiber of my being, because I'll probably be one of those people, that if anybody comes for these people and tries to drag them out by force, there will be protests of people like me, American citizens, who are going to stand there and do everything possible to prevent these women and children, which is all who these people are.
How about the criminals?
From being,
how about the terrorists? How about the convicted?
How do you sort
stop? How do you know who it is?
How do you sort through?
That's the problem. I don't know who.
Stop. I'm sorry. I live next to these people. I can tell you they are women and they are children. Are there terrorists among them? I don't know, but I can tell you that
and neither does the government.
But I can tell you. But let me tell. Okay, but what I'm telling you right now, practically speaking, is that there will be people, American citizens, who will prevent these little kids from being dragged out of these shelters. There are. And what's going to happen to these people? What is going to happen to the military when the military opens fire on us?
No one's. Can you say? Hang on one sec, Chuck. We're way down a rabbit hole here.
You
promise you with every.
Okay. Sounds like she's not quite ready to sit down for a meeting at Mar-a-Lago. I think she's going to take her chances with these crazy talking points. And I don't know about you guys, but I have watched more CNN in the last couple of weeks than I ever have in my entire life. And I actually appreciate Scott Jennings going on this show and his level-headed take on these issues. But it's crazy to me that she's sitting there trying to say that they're not going to be able to distinguish between criminals and terrorists and traffickers and gang members and women and children. That how do you know? How do you know who's who? Like, really? I think it's probably going to be pretty obvious. And from what I can tell, as I said before, almost every state has the presence of the violent Tren de Aragua gang in it, and they are taking over a lot of areas of our major cities. And not only that, these gangs are targeting law enforcement. So if law enforcement tries to do anything. So if law enforcement tries to do anything, they are being taken out by these gang members, and these people have no boundaries. Like, if you want to talk about soulless and evil, it's these gang members. Like, they are willing to do anything. So in my opinion, and probably, where she's getting her talking points from, it is going to take our military to get these people out of here. And we're obviously not talking about women and children. We're talking about these people that are taking over apartment complexes and terrorizing innocent communities. They are hostile. They're the worst of the worst, and they have no problem taking down anybody who comes near the premises with the intention of removing them from it. But according to Democrats, groups that will take on our military and that we need our military to come in and remove, these people should be allowed to live in our neighborhoods next to our schools and next to our churches and next to our workplaces and next to our grocery stores. That's how delusional these people are. I do want to get into another clip here, equally as unhinged. We have a clip from a woman from the Washington Post, and her target of choice is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., choosing to spread the lie that things like questioning vaccines and questioning the development and approval process of things like medications means that this man actually wants to kill our kids. And that's the messaging that Democrats should run with on this issue. So let's have, I didn't realize it didn't pull it up. Let me grab it really quick. That's what this woman is running with. So let's have a listen.
You can't talk broad themes. You have to boil it down to nuts and bolts, and you have to be pithy. What do I mean by pithy? How about this? Republicans want to kill your kids. It's actually true. If you're going to oppose vaccinations, if you're going to stop breakthrough medical research, if you're going to allow minors and all sorts of people to get semi-automatic weapons, which they use to shoot up schools, well, then you are responsible for kids' health and death, unfortunately. It has to be that simple and that direct, and it has to be over and over and over again. Well, you can't talk broad.
I'm going to leave her face right there for a second, because I think that demonstrates how unhinged she truly is. She's tying in school shootings to questioning vaccines, because, I know that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has a long history of, it's not vaccine denialism or anything like that. It's questioning these things, questioning the vaccine schedule, questioning like how many of these do we really need? What process have these been put through to make sure that they are effective, to make sure that they are doing the thing that they are labeled as, and not only that they're not causing harm or causing issues in other areas for our kids. And it's always wild to me that when someone wants to question an agency that has been able to run amok with no accountability, like the FDA or any of these food companies that are putting disgusting things into our food, the left flips out. Yet they think that we're the ones that want to control everyone. All we want is accountability. We want clean food. We want vaccines that go through an ethical process. And we want those that are creating our medications to be held responsible for giving us things that don't work or that do cause harm. And I understand that regardless of any medication, there's always going to be a risk. Any vaccine, there's going to be a risk, but it just seems like so much of it we're just expected to accept, and there's no backlash to them if horrific things happen on the other end of it. And that's something that we should all be unified in being against, in wanting a stricter process and making sure that whatever is being put out there is actually meant to make us healthier and to improve our well-being. And that just seems to be something that the left, for whatever reason, is against, and which is also mind-boggling, because they're also the ones that have no problem pumping our kids full of testosterone and estrogen and puberty blockers. They have no issue with women that are transitioning to being a man having a baby while they're loaded up with testosterone and breastfeeding that baby with all of these dangerous things coursing through their body. So I don't think they have any room to talk about, causing harm to children, when that is something that they don't ever seem to want to question. And opposing all of these things honestly just shows how much the left doesn't care about everyday people. They just care about opposing Trump and opposing the right, because it doesn't matter what it is. Like, if we want clean food, they have to oppose it. If we want safe vaccines and safe medications, they have to oppose it. If we want to deport terrorists and gang members, they have to oppose it. These are all things that should be unifying issues, but they can't have that. So they will oppose anything that comes from the right just for the sake of being against it. And again, this just confirms who really is responsible for dividing this country. This last clip that I want to show, this isn't about opposing anything. This is just a clip that was circulating on Twitter over the last couple of days. I don't know how to say the guy's name. I know it's Cenk. I think it's Cenk. And he's on the Young Turks podcast or platform. And he's someone that is known for being pretty far left, but he has come out recently calling out Democrats for being completely unhinged. And I think that he has definitely had his own share of unhinged moments, but he's like calling out Democrats and basically saying it's because you are so delusional. That is a large part of why we lost this election. I mean, never mind the fact that they put somebody in office that nobody liked, that nobody voted for, and that, you know, their own party made very clear that they had no interest in putting this person in a position of power at any point and only chose to support her when they were told to. But he's coming out and saying, you guys, you've got to get a grip, basically. So he's on this, he's on with Piers Morgan, and this is the guy in the middle that looks kind of like the Crypt Keeper. I think I know his last name is Lightman. I want to say his first name is Allen. But apparently he had all of these predictions about Kamala Harris winning the election, and Cenk is calling him out for being so completely wrong about his predictions, and he just cannot handle it. So let's just have a look, because this was actually pretty amusing to watch.
Look, we could get into this discussion, but one, I think you're blaming the voters. I think that's a terrible idea. And look, I debated Professor Lichtman before. I told him his theories about the keys were absurd. I was right. He was wrong. I said he'd lose his keys.
No, you were
couldn't
not
find
right,
him
and
before
I
the
was
election.
not wrong, and that's a cheap shot, and I won't stand for it.
Well, who won, brother?
You should not be
Who
taking
won?
cheap
Who
shots
won?
at me.
Who
You
won?
want to make your
You
point,
live
make your
in
point.
a total
Don't make it
world of
personal.
denial.
I read your own followers' comments, and they all trashed you, every one of them, and supported me. So
Yeah,
quiet with
right.
your personal
Yeah,
attacks.
come find out again.
Make whatever
Okay.
point you want.
Yeah.
Don't
Look,
make it personal.
You don't know anything. You don't know
You
anything.
attacked me
You're
personally.
so deluded.
Oh, right. I've only been a professor for 51 years.
On this program,
published
I've never been
13
able
books.
to finish a
How
thought.
many books have you published? No, because you're personally
Yeah.
attacking me again. Say whatever you want, but I'm not going to
Okay,
stand
but
for
brother,
personal
you got it
attacks.
wrong.
Say
You were
whatever you want.
preposterously and stupidly wrong. So, okay, all right. Can I just
Don't
finish
call
a
me
goddamn thought
stupid.
ever on this show?
No, not if you're
Okay,
personally.
well,
I
you proved
admitted
it.
I was wrong. I don't need you to call me stupid.
Okay.
I'll just say
What
it's
kind of
great to see
nonsense
you
is that?
Democrats
Yeah, I
all
know.
getting
Who
along
taught
so
you
well.
manners?
It's lovely to
You
see a
one. Can I
post-election
finish a
harmony as you all
goddamn
come
point?
together
We're
again.
just
Hey,
one
Alan,
right now.
shh. Hey, Alan, you deserve a tall glass of shut up juice. So can you just shut up for a second and let someone who knows what
Not
they're
if
doing
you're
so
gonna
right,
personally
Pierre.
attack
You're
me.
so right.
So-
We're so
Make any
unified right now.
point you
It's great.
want.
So
I will not sit here and stand for personal attacks, for blasphemy against me. You don't need to do that. You don't boost your own
blasphemy
ego
against you?
by
Who the hell are
attacking
you?
me
Are you
like that.
Jesus
Just
Christ,
make your
you
points.
loser? Okay, can I
Make your points.
just give the correct answer for once? Look, we can get.
Oh, you deserve a tall glass of shut up juice. That reminds me of quotes from Happy Gilmore when he's like, "You eat pieces of crap for breakfast." Sorry guys, I'm not someone who swears, so I don't swear on my show, so I always like edit myself. But The reason I wanted to touch on this one is because one of the main talking points I have heard from the left as they continue to unleash their unhinged rants about Trump winning the election is that people with college degrees primarily vote Democrat. And this, of course, has given them a false sense of intellectual superiority, and it largely fuels the talking point that they're educated and Trump supporters are not. However, this just is a blatant demonstration that a college degree has become something that is almost completely useless, and that having a degree is not the flex that it used to be. A degree does not equal intelligence, and you can have an extensive resume of academic accomplishments and still be the dumbest person in the room. And Lightman's response to this, to what Cenk is saying to him, is that it just shows this lack of self-awareness and lack of humility that comes with this false sense of intelligence. Because even when they're so completely wrong, they still think they're right. They still think they are the smartest person in the room. And therefore, they demonstrate that they are usually, as I said, the dumbest person in the room. And it actually makes their lack of intelligence so much more glaring. So I just wanted to highlight that because I thought it was just amusing. And Unsubscribed Gaming says, wow, I've seen 2-year-olds act more like an adult. Absolutely. Some of the things that I have seen online, I'm like, I don't think that my kids ever acted that way, even when they were toddlers. And if they did, we corrected their behavior. So I think that all of these people are showing us what it looks like when you grow up and somebody doesn't correct your behavior and doesn't tell you to knock it off and doesn't hold you accountable for being an absolute crazy lunatic. So that is, oh my gosh, I'm just going to look at some of these. Nessie, just to go back to some of our conversation, Nessie says, I would not trust the Dems being nice as they're up to something. Absolutely. Absolutely. Arma says, time to make America sane again. I completely agree. I am so ready for it. So guys, I would love to hear all of your thoughts on everything that we talked about today, from the meeting with Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezenski with Trump, from the issue with Nancy Mace trying to keep a man out of the women's bathroom in Congress, and then of course all of these unhinged takes that the left is spewing out there, because obviously they are never going to make it seem like Trump is reasonable at all in the things that he is proposing and the people that he is putting in office. They are never going to allow their base to think that the things that he's doing are actually for our benefit. So it's absolutely insane. And I know you guys have probably seen a lot of these mayors in these different cities and governors. I know Katie Hobbs of Arizona is one of them, that are refusing to comply with the orders of the Trump administration to start deporting people that are here illegally. But on that topic, I just want to remind you guys, on Friday, I actually do have a special live stream set up. It'll be the same time, Friday morning. I do plan to start on time, 10 a.m. Central Time. But I have connected with an immigration attorney, somebody who creates content on TikTok, and I was really drawn in. I really enjoyed some of her videos, basically telling people to calm down about some of the things that Trump is proposing regarding immigration. And I think it's just kind of important to get an in-depth understanding of the immigration process, because obviously it's something I'm not an expert in. I know a lot of us, this is not our area of expertise, but as people are out there just continuing to sow fear, thinking that, their cousin or, somebody that they know, their friend with brown skin is going to be the first person on the list to get kicked out of the country, and all of this fear mongering that they're doing, I really want to nip some of those things in the bud and what that process looks like, and just kind of a reasonable perspective, so that we can go out there and actually have conversations with people, because information obviously is so beneficial. Have a non-biased grasp on these issues, so that we can go out there and debunk so many of these things and offer a comprehensive understanding of what the actual immigration process looks like. So please join me on Friday morning at 10 a.m. Anybody that you think might be interested in this subject, 10 a.m. Central Time, will be on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook streaming. And I'll try to answer some of your questions as you leave them in the comments. But again, so that we can arm ourselves with information and go out there and fight the misinformation and the disinformation that is coming from the people who claim to be against those things. So please, all of you, hit the like button. Make sure that you hit the thumbs up button. Help me get to that 10,000 subscriber mark. I am getting so close. Every day I'm just like, oh, so close to that 10,000 subscriber mark. Invite people to like my channel. I have a few more videos planned for the rest of the week to release. But again, join. What's an immigrant to you? Somebody, well, there's a difference between an immigrant and an illegal immigrant. Somebody who has come to this country, there's a legal process for that. My mom is one of them. She moved here from Canada. I was born in Canada. I actually have dual citizenship, so I didn't have to go through all of that process, but I have family members that have, and it is a very challenging process. So I have firsthand experience of my family members having to deal with it. My mom is the whitest lady out there, and I know that nobody is coming to kick her out of the country. So let's have, Anson Knowles says, does Samantha interact with the chat or is just this the end of her stream? I try to interact with the chats as I go, but I also want to try and have a smooth process as I'm talking about the things that I'm talking about. So anyway, this is the end of the stream. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you guys. Keep it real, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.